At my brother's wedding reception, his bride Ashley looked me in the eyes and said, "I need you to leave now. Security will escort you out if needed." What she forgot was every vendor contract was in my name. I pulled out my phone and felt something cold and calculating settle into my mind as I realized they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The shock hit me first, like a physical blow to my chest. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress that I'd paid for myself, watching my own brother nod in agreement behind his new wife as she threatened to have me escorted out by security. The reception hall buzzed with conversation around us, 200 guests completely unaware that the bride was publicly humiliating the person who had funded their entire celebration. My immediate reaction wasn't tears or pleading. Instead, something analytical and strategic clicked into place in my mind. The same methodical thinking that had made me successful in my career. I found myself mentally cataloging every contract, every payment, every legal document that gave me complete control over this $45,000 production they were trying to kick me out of. "I'm your sister," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I paid for half this wedding." Ashley's response was delivered with casual cruelty that revealed everything I needed to know about how they really saw me. "That was your choice?" she replied, her tone suggesting I should be grateful for the opportunity to fund their happiness. "Security will escort you out if needed." Tyler stood there saying nothing, which told me everything about where his loyalty lay. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was calculated humiliation designed to put me in my place as the family ATM who should provide money without expecting basic respect in return. But what they didn't understand was that I hadn't just written checks and walked away. I had maintained control over every single vendor relationship, every contract, every service provider that was making their wedding possible. The strategic part of my brain began analyzing their position versus mine with cold precision. They saw me as a resource to be managed and dismissed when convenient. I saw myself as someone who had just been handed the perfect justification for showing them exactly what their disrespect would cost them. The power dynamic they thought they understood was about to be completely reversed. I'm Isabella, 31 years old, and I've built my career as a software consultant specializing in enterprise resource management systems. My expertise lies in analyzing complex business processes, identifying inefficiencies, and implementing solutions that eliminate waste while maximizing control and accountability. Over the past 8 years, I've consulted for Fortune 500 companies on systems that manage millions of dollars in vendor relationships and contract compliance. My professional background gave me specific skills that my family never understood or appreciated. I had designed automated procurement systems for companies managing thousands of supplier relationships simultaneously. I understood exactly how vendor contracts worked, what legal obligations existed on both sides, and how to maintain leverage throughout complex, multi-party agreements. When I'd agreed to help with Tyler's wedding, I'd applied the same methodical approach I used in my corporate consulting work. Financially, I was in a position that my family had never bothered to understand. My consulting business generated between $180,000 and $220,000 annually, depending on project volume and complexity. I owned my downtown condo outright, had $240,000 in liquid savings, and maintained a diversified investment portfolio worth approximately $380,000. While my parents worried about their mortgage payments and Tyler struggled with student debt, I had been building wealth systematically for years. My approach to the wedding funding hadn't been emotional generosity. It had been strategic investment with proper documentation and control mechanisms. Every vendor contract was negotiated directly by me, with payment terms that ensured I maintained primary client status. The florist, caterer, musicians, photographer, and venue coordinator all had my contact information as the primary decision maker and payment source. Tyler and Ashley had been copied on communications, but they weren't the contracting party. The $45,000 they saw as my wedding gift was actually a series of carefully structured vendor agreements that I could modify or cancel according to standard industry terms. I had maintained detailed spreadsheets tracking every expense, every deadline, every service requirement, and every contractual obligation. What they thought was their wedding was actually my event that I had graciously allowed them to participate in as the nominal bride and groom. My professional network included several attorneys who specialized in contract law and event management, relationships built through years of enterprise consulting work. I had advised clients on vendor management disputes worth millions of dollars, and I understood exactly what legal protections existed for client-vendor relationships. More importantly, I knew how quickly complex event logistics could be modified when the primary contractor decided to exercise their contractual rights. Tyler had no idea that his casual dismissal of my feelings was actually a strategic blunder of enormous proportions. His new bride had just threatened the person who controlled every aspect of their reception experience, from the flowers on the tables to the food being served to their guests. They had confused my generosity with weakness, my family loyalty with desperation for their approval. That confusion was about to become very expensive for them. The morning after Ashley's ultimatum, I began implementing a strategic response plan that would demonstrate the difference between emotional reactions and professional consequences. My first call was to my attorney, David Harrison, who had handled contract disputes for several of my corporate clients. I explained the situation and asked for his assessment of my legal position regarding the vendor agreements. "Isabella, you're the primary contracting party on all these agreements," David confirmed after reviewing the documents I'd sent him. "The vendors have contractual obligations to you, not to your brother or his wife. You have the legal right to modify or cancel these contracts according to their terms, which typically include same-day cancellation with appropriate notice to the service providers." My second consultation was with Jennifer Blake, a friend and fellow consultant who specialized in event management systems for large corporations. She had managed vendor relationships for corporate events worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and understood the logistics of coordinating multiple service providers simultaneously. "What they don't realize," Jennifer explained, "is that wedding vendors are contractors, not family members. They follow contract terms and payment authorizations, not emotional appeals." I called my accountant, Michael Stevens, to understand the financial implications of my next steps. "The deposits and payments you've made are business transactions," he explained. "If you choose to cancel services, you're entitled to refunds according to the contract terms. Some vendors may charge cancellation fees, but most will work with you since you've been the reliable payment source throughout this process." My risk assessment was straightforward. Tyler and Ashley had publicly humiliated me in front of family members and wedding guests, demonstrating that they saw me as nothing more than a funding source without basic respect or consideration. Their treatment had crossed a line from taking advantage of my generosity to actively damaging my dignity and family relationships. The potential consequences of my response were entirely proportional to their choice to escalate the situation. I spent 3 hours that evening creating a detailed action plan with specific timing and communication protocols. Every vendor would be contacted in a specific sequence to minimize confusion and ensure smooth execution. I would document every call, every cancellation, and every response to protect my own interests and demonstrate the professional nature of my decision-making process. The wedding planner, Catherine Davis, called me the next morning with concerns about Ashley's increasingly demanding behavior toward the vendors. "Isabella, I have to ask directly. Ashley has been treating our service providers very poorly, making unreasonable demands and speaking to them disrespectfully. Several vendors have asked me privately why she's so rude to the people trying to make her wedding perfect." This conversation confirmed something I'd suspected but hadn't fully realized. Ashley's behavior toward me wasn't isolated. She had been treating everyone associated with the wedding as hired help beneath her consideration, not understanding that these were professional relationships that required mutual respect. Her attitude had created tension with multiple vendors who were only continuing their services because of their contracts with me. The florist mentioned that Ashley demanded they completely redesign the centerpieces yesterday without any consideration for the additional cost or labor involved. Catherine continued. The caterer said she complained about the menu options and insisted they prepare additional dishes that weren't in the original agreement. None of these changes were approved by you as the contracting client, so the vendors are confused about who actually has decision-making authority. I realized that Ashley had been creating problems throughout the planning process that I hadn't been aware of because the vendors had been handling her demands professionally while maintaining their primary relationship with me. Her treatment of service providers revealed the same disrespect she'd shown me, but with people who had specific contractual protections and professional standards that she didn't understand. My conversation with the photographer, James Wilson, provided additional insight into the situation. Isabella, I've been photographing weddings for 15 years, and I've never seen a bride treat vendors this way, he said. Ashley acts like we're servants instead of professionals she's hired to provide services. Several of us have discussed whether we want to continue working with her, but our contracts are with you, so we're honoring those commitments. The caterer, Maria Gonzalez, had a similar story. Isabella, your brother's fiancée has been making demands that go far beyond our agreed services. She wants us to change the entire menu 2 days before the wedding, add additional courses we haven't prepared for, and serve additional guests who weren't included in the original headcount. When I explained that these changes would require contract modifications and additional payments, she told me to just make it work, because you would cover any additional costs. These conversations revealed that Ashley had been leveraging my financial commitment to make unreasonable demands on service providers, assuming they would accommodate her because I would pay for whatever she wanted. She had been using my money as leverage to treat people poorly, which added another layer of manipulation to her behavior that I found completely unacceptable. I consulted with my business mentor, Patricia Foster, who had guided me through several complex client relationship challenges during my consulting career. Isabella, what you're describing is a pattern of behavior that goes beyond family drama, she said. This person is using your resources to treat service providers badly, which reflects on your professional reputation. If vendors associate you with this kind of client behavior, it could affect your credibility in situations where you need to manage similar relationships. Patricia helped me understand that allowing Ashley to continue abusing vendors while using my financial backing could have professional consequences for me beyond the wedding itself. Several of these service providers worked with corporate clients in my industry, and their impression of my judgment and character could affect future business relationships. Protecting my professional reputation required taking decisive action to distance myself from Ashley's behavior. The final strategic consultation was with my friend Robert Hayes, who had successfully managed a similar family financial dispute several years earlier when his siblings had tried to take advantage of his business success. The key is documentation and clear communication, Robert advised. Make sure every action you take is professional, legally sound, and well documented. Don't let them turn this into emotional drama where you become the villain. Stick to facts, contracts, and business principles. By Friday evening, I had developed a comprehensive response strategy with specific timing, documentation requirements, and communication protocols. The plan would demonstrate the difference between their emotional manipulation and my professional approach to contract management. Every step would be legally sound, ethically justified, and designed to protect both my financial interests and my professional reputation. Saturday morning, I received the final insult that confirmed my decision was correct. Ashley called me with one more demand that revealed exactly how she saw our relationship. "Isabella, we need you to skip the dinner portion of the reception," she said casually. "It'll save money on catering since you already paid for everything and you don't have a +1 anyway, so you're not really missing anything." The request that I leave my own brother's wedding during dinner, after funding the entire celebration, while she saved money on the catering I had paid for, crystallized everything I needed to understand about their priorities and values. This wasn't just about wedding stress or family dynamics. This was about fundamental respect and human decency, qualities they had demonstrated they completely lacked. I spent Saturday afternoon finalizing my vendor contact list and reviewing contract terms one final time. Every service provider had specific cancellation procedures and timeframes. Most allowed same-day cancellation with appropriate notice, though some had graduated penalty structures depending on timing. The financial cost of cancellation would be significantly less than continuing to fund an event where I was treated as an unwelcome inconvenience. That evening, I attended the rehearsal dinner and watched Ashley and Tyler perform their roles as gracious hosts while privately planning to humiliate me the following day. Ashley made a speech thanking everyone for their support, with special mention of Tyler's generous sister, who made this all possible. The irony of her public gratitude, while privately planning my expulsion, wasn't lost on me or several other family members who seemed uncomfortable with the disconnect. Tyler pulled me aside after dinner to thank me again for my financial support, while simultaneously preparing to back his wife's decision to kick me out of the reception. "Izzy, I know Ashley can be demanding, but she's just stressed about everything being perfect," he said. "Tomorrow is going to be amazing because of everything you've done for us." His manipulation was almost as offensive as Ashley's direct threats. Sunday morning arrived with perfect weather and no indication from Tyler or Ashley that they had reconsidered their plan to publicly humiliate me. I dressed carefully for the ceremony, knowing it would be the last family event I would attend, where I allowed myself to be treated as nothing more than a source of funding for other people's dreams. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, with every detail executed exactly as planned by the vendors I had hired and managed. The flowers were perfect, the music was elegant, the photography captured every important moment, and the venue looked exactly as we had envisioned during our planning meetings. Everything that made their wedding day special was the result of professional relationships I had built and maintained over months of careful coordination. After the ceremony, Ashley approached me with cold determination and delivered her ultimatum in front of several family members and wedding guests. Her tone was confident, suggesting she believed she held all the power in our relationship. Tyler's support for her position confirmed that they had planned this confrontation and intended to follow through on their threat to have me removed by security if I didn't comply voluntarily. I walked calmly to the parking lot, pulling out my phone and accessing the vendor contact list I had memorized over the past few months. Every name, every number, every contract detail was familiar to me because I had personally negotiated and managed every relationship. They thought they were dismissing a family member who would quietly disappear. They were actually canceling their event planner, primary contractor, and sole financial backer. My first call was to Maria, the florist who had created the beautiful centerpieces, now decorating the reception tables. "Hi, Maria, this is Isabella. I need to cancel the floral service immediately and have everything packed up and removed from the venue." Her initial surprise was understandable, but she confirmed the contract terms and agreed to begin removal within 30 minutes. The caterer was my second call. "Chef Gonzalez, this is Isabella. I'm canceling the catering service effective immediately. Please pack up all the food and stop service to the reception guests." She asked for confirmation of the cancellation terms, which I provided along with my client authorization codes that proved I had the legal authority to make this decision. The DJ received similar instructions to pack up his equipment and cease music service. The photographer was asked to stop shooting and deliver only the ceremony photos per our modified agreement. The bartender was instructed to close the bar and remove all alcohol and equipment from the venue. Each conversation was professional, clear, and legally sound. Within 20 minutes, Tyler's phone began buzzing with panic as vendors throughout the venue started packing up equipment and removing services in the middle of the reception. The transformation from elegant wedding celebration to confused chaos happened with remarkable efficiency, a testament to the professionalism of the service providers, who understood their contractual obligations. Tyler came running to the parking lot, Ashley screaming behind him, both of them finally understanding that their treatment of me had consequences they hadn't anticipated. "You can't do this, Isabella," Tyler shouted. "You're ruining our wedding." Ashley was alternating between threats about lawsuits and desperate pleas for me to fix this immediately. "I'm not ruining anything," I replied calmly, showing him my phone with the vendor contact list and contract summaries. "You told me to leave, so I'm leaving and taking my event with me. Every contract is in my name, every payment came from my accounts, and every vendor relationship belongs to me. You wanted me gone, so now you can explain to your 200 guests why their dinner just disappeared." The scene inside the venue was exactly what I had hoped to achieve. Guests who had been enjoying cocktails and conversation suddenly found themselves watching caterers pack up food, florists dismantle centerpieces, and technical crew remove sound equipment. The reception hall was rapidly becoming an empty room with confused, hungry people, asking each other what was happening. Ashley tried to convince the remaining vendors to ignore my cancellation instructions, but they explained politely that their contracts and payment authorization came from me, not from her. Her attempts to assert authority she didn't possess only highlighted how completely she had misunderstood the power dynamics of the situation. She had assumed my money made her the client, when in reality, my money made me the client. Several family members approached me in the parking lot, some apologizing for Ashley's behavior, and others asking if there was any way to resolve the situation. I explained calmly that respect works both ways, and that treating someone like a bank account instead of a family member has natural consequences. My decision was final, professionally justified, and legally sound. The immediate aftermath was everything I had hoped to accomplish. Tyler and Ashley were left to explain to 200 guests why their wedding reception had literally vanished around them. The venue was contractually obligated to provide the space, but without catering, flowers, music, or bar service, it was just an empty room with embarrassed people wondering whether they should leave. Some guests tried to organize alternative arrangements, suggesting nearby restaurants or offering to order pizza for the group. Others quietly left, expressing sympathy to Tyler and Ashley while clearly understanding that something significant had gone wrong with the wedding planning. The few family members who understood the full situation seemed more angry at Ashley's treatment of me than surprised by my response. Ashley's attempts to salvage the situation by calling vendors directly were unsuccessful because she had no contractual relationship with any service providers and no payment authorization codes. Her demands that they fix this immediately were met with professional explanations that their services had been canceled by the contracting party and could not be reinstated without new agreements and advance payments. Over the following weeks, the consequences continued building systematically. Tyler and Ashley faced social embarrassment as the story of their wedding disaster spread through family and friend networks. People who had attended the reception asked questions about what had happened, and the truth about their treatment of me eventually became widely known. Financial pressures mounted as they realized how much they had depended on my continued support for their lifestyle expectations. Without my subsidies for their apartment rental, car payments, and entertainment expenses, they struggled to maintain the standard of living they had taken for granted. Ashley's part-time social media marketing work couldn't support the expenses of independent adult life. Tyler's relationship with our parents became strained as they learned the full details of how Ashley had treated me and manipulated the wedding situation. Our mother, who had initially tried to mediate the family conflict, eventually sided with me After understanding the extent of Ashley's disrespectful behavior and Tyler's willingness to support it, Ashley's social media presence, which had featured heavily curated lifestyle content funded by my generosity, became increasingly hollow as she couldn't afford the experiences and purchases that had defined her online persona. Her attempts to portray herself as a victim of my selfish behavior were unsuccessful because too many people had witnessed her actual treatment of me and the vendors. My professional reputation was enhanced by the strategic way I handled the situation. Colleagues who learned about the wedding incident admired my decisive response to being treated disrespectfully, and several vendors I had worked with contacted me about potential future collaborations. My approach demonstrated professional competence and personal integrity that earned respect in business circumstances. 6 months later, Tyler and Ashley's marriage was showing serious strain under financial pressure and social embarrassment. They had moved in with Ashley's parents and were struggling to rebuild their independence without my financial support. Their relationship dynamics, which had been based partly on shared exploitation of my generosity, were much more difficult to maintain when they had to rely on their own resources. Tyler eventually reached out to apologize and attempt reconciliation, admitting that Ashley's treatment of me had been inappropriate and that he should have supported his sister instead of enabling her behavior. His apology was genuine, but came only after he experienced the consequences of losing my financial and emotional support. Ashley never apologized directly, but she stopped posting on social media about the wedding situation and made several indirect attempts to reconnect through mutual family members. Today, I maintain appropriate family relationships based on mutual respect and clearly established boundaries. Tyler has learned to appreciate my support without taking it for granted, and our parents have gained a much better understanding of how their expectations for my generosity had enabled other people's manipulative behavior. Ashley and Tyler divorced 18 months after their wedding disaster, with financial stress and social embarrassment contributing significantly to their relationship breakdown. Ashley moved back with her parents and now works in retail management, earning approximately $30,000 annually. Tyler lives independently but maintains a much more modest lifestyle than he had expected during his marriage. The experience taught me that strategic patience and professional principles provide much more effective responses to disrespect than emotional confrontations or family drama.